Hello folks, welcome to week 4 and our second helping of legal and ethical issues. Last week we focused mainly on the legal side of things. This week we'll finish that up with some information on informed consent and advanced directives. Then we'll dive in and talk about ethical issues in surgical technology. So last week I included on the PowerPoint and video the objectives for this unit relating to legal. This week we're focusing more on ethical and moral issues. So this slide lists the objectives for ethical and moral issues. So take a moment now, pause the video, read through these objectives to help you anticipate the rest of your learning within this unit. So what does it mean to give consent? To consent is to give permission for an action, or more specifically, as your book states, consent is a voluntary and informed act in which one party gives permission to another party to touch. Notice that description contained the word informed. Almost all surgical patients have given written, informed consent before their surgery takes place. This means that before someone gives consent, they're made aware of the nature and risks of the procedure. The doctrine of informed consent says that the patient has the right to know and to understand. It's a written consent that's signed before surgery and has to be signed before the patient enters surgery or the treatment area. It can't be signed under coercion or intimidation, and the information must be presented to the patient in a language that they understand. So the procedure and any potential risks or complications have to be explained. Finally, the patient needs to be made aware of any alternative options and the risks and benefits of those options. Some items that are included on the written consent are the patient's legal name, the surgeon's name, the procedure to be performed, the risks that are involved with anesthesia and also with the procedure itself, the legal signatures of both the patient and the witness, or two witnesses, and the date and time of those signatures. In addition to these 7 things, it may also include consent to allow the surgeon to bring in colleagues to assist him or her if needed. So, who can sign an informed consent form? A competent adult can sign for him or herself. A parent or legal guardian can sign for a minor, and a minor can give informed consent if he or she is emancipated or married to an adult. A guardian in place due to a physical inability or legal incompetence may sign a consent form as well. This may be a permanent guardianship or temporary. A hospital administrator can give informed consent for another person, and so can the courts. To give informed consent, a person cannot be under the influence of drugs or alcohol. So what happens if they are? Imagine a gentleman who falls down a flight of stairs while celebrating his daughter's wedding. He broke his hip. He needs emergency surgery to fix it. He consumed 2 beers with dinner. In an urgent case like this one, his spouse or another responsible adult relative could sign the consent form. Illiterate patients can sign their consent forms with an X. In this case, the person acting as a witness will write patient mark next to it. The operating surgeon cannot act as witness. Usually, RNs fill this role. So consent can be either express consent or implied consent. Express consent is a direct verbal or written statement granting permission for treatment. Informed consent, which we just talked about on the previous slide, is a type of express consent. It's preferred in healthcare over implied consent, which is when circumstances exist that would lead the healthcare provider to believe that the person or the patient had given consent even though no expressed words of consent were given. That definition can be found in your reading. An example would be if the surgeon finds more extensive pathology than they originally planned or thought they would find, and then they end up having to do a more invasive procedure to treat that patient. So in this case, if the family can't be contacted, implied consent could potentially be assumed. So let's move on from consent now. Spend a moment talking about advanced directives. Advanced directives give directions about the patient's wishes when it comes to medical treatment. In the advanced directives, you may find a living will. This document makes your wishes known regarding life-prolonging treatment. It will outline what measures you want taken. So this is a document that's filed with your health provider or their office or system, but does not take effect unless you're incapacitated. Advanced directives may also include something called a healthcare power of attorney. This is a legal document which gives another person the right to make medical, not financial, decisions for you if you're incapacitated. This person needs to be made well aware of your wishes before they're needed in this capacity. You don't want to put a loved one in the position of making difficult medical decisions for you without knowing that they're following your wishes. Also found within advanced directives will be directions for organ donation. It's not always as simple as a yes or no. An organ donor can specify what they want to donate. Occasionally, the advanced directives will include a refusal of tissue or blood products, and this is often because of religious reasons. For example, Jehovah's Witnesses do not accept blood products. Extra precautions may be put in place in these situations to support a successful surgery where donor products may be needed but can't be used. For example, we'll talk in future units about something called the cell saver, which allows the patient's blood to be suctioned up, treated, and returned to them during the procedure. DNR stands for Do Not Resuscitate. If a patient has a DNR in their advanced directives, they will not be resuscitated in the event of a cardiopulmonary arrest. However, DNR orders are suspended in the OR. Surgery is a special circumstance, and DNR orders don't apply there. The DNR will then be reinstated in the post-operative unit. So let's move along from our legal discussion and get into the ethical portion of our unit. We'll start by talking about the American Hospital Association. The American Hospital Association was founded in 1898, and they represent almost 5,000 hospitals, healthcare systems, and networks, as well as other providers, and 43,000 individual members. They provide education and information to help hospitals stay current on healthcare issues and trends. And the education they offer includes a lot of administrative topics to help hospitals run better. Things like policy management, criminal background screening, patient flow, and business models. Things like that. The vision of the AHA, or American Hospital Association, is of a society of healthy communities where all individuals reach their highest potential for health. Their mission is to advance the health of individuals and communities. The AHA leads, represents, and serves hospitals, health systems, and other related organizations that are accountable to the community and committed to health improvement. They want to improve the health of all people. The AHA advocates for patients and their rights in the hospital. They have a set of guidelines to help patients to understand their rights. It's called the AHA Patient Care Partnership. It used to be called the Patient's Bill of Rights. It empowers patients to know their rights and also to be sure that the physician has what they need to give the highest standard of care. The links on this slide lead to a PDF file of the AHA Patient Care Partnership. I also have it listed within the support links in the Assignments tab on Blackboard. Moving on now into some ethical terminology. Tenets are opinions, beliefs, or principles held to be true by a person, and especially by an organization or a religion. A great example would again be the Jehovah's Witnesses we talked about a bit earlier. Jehovah's Witnesses do not accept blood products because it goes against their spiritual beliefs. Another example would be vegetarians choosing to abstain from eating meat. The AHA Patient Care Partnership is held to be true by the AHA as well as by 5,000 hospitals. The Surgical Tech Code of Ethics is a set of principles held to be true by a group of people known as the AST and its membership. So, what are some of the elements that go into ethical decision making? The things that influence our ethical decisions. Personal values, which can also be called personal tenets, opinions, principles, or beliefs that we hold to be true. Ethical principles, which we'll talk about next. Accountability, which we talked about a bit last week. This is being responsible for your actions. And just remember, responsibility is the role, and accountability is the action. Religious and cultural beliefs. Morality, which is strongly tied to ethics. So morality is what's right and wrong versus ethics, which is more what's best for humanity. Moral dilemmas are when you need to make a decision, but you're conflicted because there's no right answer. Corporate integrity is staying along the guidelines set by the hospital. And finally, problem solving. One of the elements of ethical decision making was ethical principles. So let's explore those here. To respect human individuality and uniqueness. So no matter how different a person is, they're still human, and they deserve the best care that we can give them. In our personal lives, we choose who we surround ourselves with, who we spend time with. But in the OR, those personal differences have to go away. People will come through your OR as patients that have terrible, racist tattoos. There will be drug addicts, alcoholics, prisoners, domestic abusers, crime suspects, the list goes on and on. It doesn't matter who they are or what their story is. They still deserve the very best of care from us. Do no harm speaks for itself, and it was one of our principles from the legal portion of this lesson as well. Beneficence is empathy and a commitment to healing. So this moves beyond being uncomfortable with the patient and focuses on giving them great health care. Acting with justice in the OR refers to the patients having the right to equal care regardless of age, race, and socioeconomic status. To respect the confidences entrusted to you. It refers to both the patient confidentiality and to those around you. Gossiping in the OR is not acceptable. The staff that works together in an OR becomes a kind of family. Respect and trust is very important in that relationship. The staff that respects each other are going to be able to create the safest environment for the patient. Act with faithfulness. Honor the patient's trust in you. Those of you that have been patients in the past will understand the amount of trust that you place in the OR staff. Imagine for a moment, you willingly roll into a cold OR. You're naked under your hospital gown. Oftentimes you're not wearing eyeglasses, your wedding ring, your dentures, and then you go to sleep, trusting that the staff in the OR will take care of you and keep you safe, not only to perform a successful procedure, but to keep you warm enough, to protect your dignity as well as possible, to treat and to speak to you and about you with respect, and to do their job with as much effort as if you were their own family member. This is a huge loss of control for our patients and an incredible amount of trust, so honor that. Never allow yourself to forget that each patient is also a person, and to that person, there's no such thing as a minor procedure. To them, what we know as a minor procedure will still feel like a huge deal. So do your job, trust your skills, and the skills of those around you. This is called autonomy. Act with honesty. Never hide a mistake. We all make mistakes. What matters is that you own those mistakes and you fix them. If you're unsure of something, ask for help or for clarification. Respect the free will of the patient. Your patients have the right to refuse care and to make decisions regarding their care. I've been in on a case where the patient, for religious reasons, wanted the OR to be as silent as possible throughout the entire time he was there. Even when the patient was under anesthesia, we all stayed very, very quiet. I've seen a patient roll into the room and then change his mind and ask to be taken right back out again. Finally, the patient's welfare has priority over all. You have a duty of care to always act in favor of patient welfare. So, we've talked a lot about the rights of the patient. Let's talk about your rights as an employee. You have the right to abstain from participating or to refuse a task if it violates your ethical, moral, or religious values. This doesn't mean that you can look at the schedule in the morning when you get to work and say, nope, I think I'm going to abstain from participating today. You have to let them know immediately upon hire or even at the interview. Be clear about exactly what you are choosing to abstain from. If an incident comes up and you have to refuse the case on the spot, be sure that it's well documented. If you feel like you cannot work with one of your coworkers based on inappropriate behavior or abuse, it needs to be documented with your supervisor ahead of time, before a case comes up. If you leave or ask to leave during a case, it could be considered abandonment. Surgical conscience is the core of your integrity as a surgical technologist. The surgical conscience is built upon several concepts. First would be commitment to cost containment. Healthcare is expensive. Wasting supplies in the OR adds to this problem of the rising cost of healthcare. So if you have something on your setup that's expensive and may or may not be used, it could be a good idea to wait and to confirm with the surgeon before opening it. Confidentiality. Non-discriminatory treatment of all patients. And this one goes right back to the ethical principle of respecting individuality and human uniqueness. Personal moral integrity. This one refers to your right to refuse a task, like we just spoke about. Principles of asepsis and sterile technique. This is perhaps one of our biggest responsibilities as a surgical tech. We're the last defense for the patient against dirty instruments. We're the people in the room most able to defend the sterile field because we're the ones who helped to create it. So don't be afraid to ask someone to take a step back from the sterile field. It's not hard for an observer to get too close without even realizing it. And most OR staff do pretty well being aware of their surroundings, though take your cues from them as you start clinical rotations. Professional honesty is referring largely to asepsis and sterile techniques. If you see something get contaminated or you think there might be some bioburden on an instrument, you need to speak up, even if it's the last instrument of its kind in the department, even if it means you might delay the case while something gets reprocessed, even if it means telling the surgeon that he or she just contaminated their gloves, and here's a fresh pair. The discomfort of delaying a case or feeling like you're calling someone out is worth it if it means that your patient doesn't have to deal with a preventable infection and a poor outcome. Finally, sterile technique, as we've stated before. So this slide outlines some identified barriers to surgical conscience. None of them are really acceptable excuses. So lack of resources, for example, having only one of a particular set of instruments and you open it up for your case only to find that, it's contaminated with bone from the last case. It may be tempting to remove the bone and hide the fact that you noticed anything. After all, no one else saw it, and if you send the tray back to be re-sterilized, it may delay your case and you're already behind schedule for the day. Nope, none of that matters in the face of patient safety. You have to guard your surgical conscience and your integrity here. How about pure apathy? Maybe your colleagues open up all the expensive hold items because it's easier than asking the surgeon and opening only a few later. Maybe they don't care, or they don't believe that bioburden is dangerous for the patient, and they don't send their contaminated trays back. Nope, don't get sucked into what feels easier in order to sacrifice best practice for the patient's care. Stress. Stress can really affect a person's ability to effectively do their job. Nope. This job is way too important for you to allow stress to affect your performance. If there's something in your life that's affecting your ability to do this job safely, it's your responsibility to seek help when and where you need it and come to work ready and able to perform. So in 1985, the AST put out the AST Code of Ethics. This is a professional code of conduct. Breaching these guidelines would likely result in your expulsion from the profession. It's a pretty big deal. These are pretty important to you in your future. Pause the video, read through them now. The AST Code of Ethics is also linked to Blackboard under the Assignments tab for your future reference. This slide contains a list of possible ethical conflicts in the OR. This is the list that you'll use for your wiki assignment this week. And here is the second half of that list. Thanks for listening to our Week 4 lecture.